Good Monday morning, everyone. It is Martin Luther King Day here in the States. So you guys are listening to Author Talk with me, Amy, Russell, Valerie, and our lovely author guest today is Ian. So you guys, as you know, it is a weekend update. I always go first on these, and Russell gives me a bunch of crap for my weekends. So let's just get that part over with and dive into it, you guys. So last week I was super productive. If you're watching us on our YouTube channel, in our group, social medias, you guys know we love to engage with you that way. My background is different. No, I'm in the same office. This window is usually in front of me, but it's only taken me a year and a half. I finally decided to move into my house. And so I've rearranged and I cleaned my office. I cleaned my laundry room. I'm adulting. I'm getting things together. I finally made the bend and decided to be an adult, I guess. 2026 was the year to do that. But I have this kind of unspoken tradition recently, I guess. So
not being ready.
I mean, no, I'm always ready, Russell. But okay. So you guys all know, you guys are going to laugh at me. So Ian, I have a 5 and a 6-year-old. And so I have to play the car pickup game and sit in that line. And so I'm notorious for working in my car. I have the privilege of doing that and having Wi-Fi in my car. So I generally work from my car. So I sit there for a couple hours. But on Fridays, I don't want to do that. And so on Fridays, I have started picking my daughters up from school 45 minutes early. So at 2:30 instead of 3:15, we go and we have like a mini girls' day. Like we'll go and I'll get my Starbucks with them instead of beforehand. And then if I have some running around, I get to do it. Because before, when they were little, they always went everywhere with me. And now they don't. So I try to make it like a Friday thing. And you guys, Russell, go ahead and bust out and start clapping. I finally took my Christmas lights down. And by I mean Josh. Josh finally took my Christmas tree, my Christmas lights
I'm
down.
not going to clap. I totally get it. I totally get how long.
The struggle was real on that one. But we finally got that done. And then we braced for the cold. And my kids are a little bit under the weather of like having a cold or an upper respiratory. So we've just been kind of battling that. But the greatest thing I will tell you is my daughters got walkie-talkies for Christmas, and their friends live like 4 houses down or like a street over. And so now these walkie-talkies are just floating between them and their friends. So at 7:30, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed in the morning, when they're not at school, I have these little kids just screaming in this walkie-talkie wanting to talk to my kids. So it's like I have a house full of kids with only having 2 kids. So it's been kind of fun to see where the walkie-talkie is and who's talking and kind of just watching them. And my 5-year-old can ride a bike without training wheels. So my oldest and my youngest and Josh all went on a bicycle ride yesterday to the gas station at the front of the neighborhood. So bunch of changes, bunch of fun things going on. But the greatest one was when I logged on, you guys, today. And Russell and Valerie both were like, did you move rooms? But that was the greatest feeling because I worked so hard in this room for like 2.5 hours. But in terms of weekends, what all did you guys do? What adventures did you go on? What all happened this weekend? I know Valerie has super exciting news from last week. So Valerie, why don't you go first this time? You're muted.
You're muted. There you go.
Okay, so my daughter had her baby last Saturday, so now he's officially a week old. And I was telling them earlier that I've seen him every day except one day, just as a chill day, and just taking them food and everything. But of course, getting to hold the baby, and it's great. But also, Amy, I've been doing a bunch of I guess like nesting projects for the new year, just cleaning up, rearranging art, and moving things I don't know. My house has been like upside down, and then when you get it right, you're like, that's the best thing I've ever done. And it only didn't, and it's like when you in your mind, you're like, this is gonna take forever, and it really doesn't. And it's just one of those things you just keep putting off. And I've also picked up a copy of Alchemy, which this is so heavy. I started and I was like, I'm gonna have to do the audio book. It's over 1,000 pages.
It's a big book.
I was like, I'm sorry.
That's the book, Russell, that you told us about that came out of fan art, fan stories.
Oh, is that where it came out of?
Yeah, but then she rewrote it.
This is like a new
Alchemist.
level
But
of
it's
stuff.
I'm gonna have to do the audiobook. It's just I was like, I will never finish. It's just my reading time is so, and I'm in the car so much. So and
Yeah,
then
audiobook it.
yeah, so for sure. And then I can get in the zone when I'm driving. It like distracts me from the traffic, and I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't.
I'm sure you're a great driver then.
It's yes.
Doing because I'm trying to work smarter, not harder. I was just researching some AI marketing techniques for my books, just
Yeah.
in addition to the things I'm doing. I'm already starting to organize, reaching out to schools, and just I don't know. I feel like, I probably have ADD, but I've just never been
Oh, you
diagnosed. But
do.
I'm just doing all these little things but they're getting done. They're getting done, I promise. So that's what I
I
did.
love it though. That's exciting. You have now you're a grandmother. That's super exciting. And you've decided
Yeah.
on audiobooks, which is my go-to route. So I
Oh, I
love
love
that.
audiobooks. But just
Yeah.
for this
And
one, for sure. For sure. This is
oh
a for
yeah.
sure one.
Yeah. And I heard that you have to make it through the first like 5 or 6 chapters. You make it through that and then it gets really good.
Mhm.
I'm not patient enough, but that's what I've been
Well, I'm
told.
gonna give it a try. I'll give it a try.
I'm here for it. Russell, Ian,
Yeah.
what did you guys do this weekend?
Let Ian go next.
Oh,
Ian, you're
you're also
muted.
muted.
Ian, you're muted. There you go.
He's doing it.
You're still muted. He's still muted.
No, still muted. If you hit, you might have to do it on your screen though, because sometimes the shortcuts don't work. So I totally get it.
Okay, let me go ahead while he figures it out. No.
Yeah, go ahead, Russell.
Okay, I'll go ahead. So I have 2 parts to it. The first part is very cool. Another part is very domestic. So Friday night.
Hear me. There we go.
There we go.
Yay!
Okay,
Yay!
Ian, go ahead.
My apologies. Okay. So that's the type of weekend I had. All right.
I get it.
In other words, you have just witnessed a metaphor in action. There's nothing like it. I just moved an apartment's full of stuff out from the city to my permanent place. And so you can imagine, I mean, everything is everywhere, right? Which would be fine, except for the fact that I'm expecting a new puppy next week. And so
congratulations.
I found baby proof in the house simply because it's got everything everywhere. And I'm going to have an 8-week bundle who is going to think everything's worth eating. I mean, everything, just, 2x4s. I mean, we're not talking about limitations to slippers or anything here. So
congratulations, Ian.
That was my weekend.
Yeah.
After that, you can.
What kind of puppy?
Oh, an English setter. I have 2 already.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's part of the preparation. There's also the issue of what 2 dogs are going to do when another one joins.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like a first, and I just keep thinking about the Addams Family. They made a second movie where a 3rd child was expected, and the first 10 minutes of that film is a riot. All right, I'm expecting something similar.
You're in for a fun time. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
That's gonna be
well, I will continue to unpack, and I will be racing around trying to be a mother.
Yeah, I love it. That sounds like a good time.
That's a good one. And terrible. It's terrible and awful and wonderful at the same time.
Russell,
right.
Yeah. Russell's puppy just turned a year old here a
Yes.
couple months back, and he has a big retriever.
English cream retriever.
There we go.
Mhm.
She's at daycare today. Okay, so I'll go on. So Friday night, we went to a place in Houston inside the Loop that is one of the very hot, cool places right now. And we went because the food is unbelievable, but the bar is like something out of a movie. It's so beautiful and the people around it are dressed so well. And I was told the joke that I was too old, too ugly, and too short to actually be allowed into the place. Because and that kind of tells you the kind of beautiful people that were there. And so we had dinner there with another couple who were very cool. They were from Venezuela, and they were talking about how happy they were about their country, and they were telling us all the inside stuff. And as it got later, the crowd started changing, as you know it does in those type of places, and it was getting really cool. I'd had a couple of drinks, and when I went back to the bathrooms, uh, they had signs on the bathrooms telling you what kind of bathroom it was, and I couldn't figure out what they meant. And I thought that was so funny. I thought, I've got to tell them on Author Talk because it's so funny. I couldn't figure out which one to go to. I finally had to go to the handicap one because it's the only one I was sure I was allowed to go into. It was. The
What
other
was this
thing
place,
is,
Russell? I'm intrigued.
Mad. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, it's a very cool place.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very cool. You should go. The, even if you don't go out late at night, you should go and eat there as late as possible just to see the crowd. It's incredible people watching. Uh, Even more importantly, though, is the reason Ian, we lived in Atlanta on the side of a mountain under a forest. It was beautiful. And then we decided to move to Houston because that's where our grandchildren are. And Sunday, I got a call from my granddaughter, who's 8, asking if she could come over that afternoon and I could show her some basketball stuff, give her a basketball lesson. And
Why
that's
not?
why I moved to Houston. That was the
Yeah.
biggest part. That's the biggest of my weekend. Not because it's important to anyone else, but because that's why I moved to Houston to be with that little girl and get to do that. So I
There you
had a
go.
Yeah.
hell of a great weekend. We need to
Marvelous.
thank the people listening to us. We're top 10% on some podcast channels, top 1% on good pods for book interviews and book podcasts. And we got to thank everyone. We've been around a few years. It's easy to find us now. I never could before, but after Amy changed everything, even I can find us. Amy, where can people find us?
You guys, that is the truth. Ian, so just real quick, Ian, Russell always comes with a disclaimer. This is 100% Russell, and he usually picks on me and gives me a ton of crap. So when he says he can actually find it, it is the truth. He's not actually being snarky. He literally had a hard time finding it for a long time, you guys. But if you type in Author Talk on any one of our social media channels, on our YouTube channel, and any podcast avenue, my go-to is Amazon, Spotify. If you're an Apple user, iTunes, Android like me, it's Google Play. But type in Author Talk, look for the crimson, red, and gold, because like always, I love those colors and I picked them and I think they're beautiful. And that will be us. You can hear every single show that we've done, you guys. And if you want to have a good little chuckle, like I like to do every now and then, you can go over to our YouTube channel or any one of our social media channels and see how we started back when Russell lived in Houston. The first time we used to drive down there and pre-record episodes at his place in downtown Houston to where we have evolved to today. You can go on over to those and enjoy it and have a good chuckle. But you can also see them on any one of our social media channels. We are all public and out there. You can engage with us, ask us questions. If you want to be on the show, you guys, the only claim to millennialhood I will accept is the fact that you do have to DM me. My emails do get bogged down and I'm terrible at email communication. I'm much better at a text message.
She really is, Ian. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
you
It's
can
my
send her
only
10
claim.
emails, you never hear from her. It's awful.
True. It is a very true thing. It's the only time I will claim being a millennial, you guys, is how we communicate for sure. But with all that being said, Valerie, let's get Ian talking about his book and his journey to becoming an author. So with that, take it away, Valerie.
Yeah, okay. So, Ian, this is your first book, is that correct?
No, it's not actually. In fact, this all started with a book. I mean,
oh, that's so exciting.
So I've rarely changed jobs, but I've changed careers several times. And back in 2021.
Okay, stop.
Well,
that was a completely ironic and weird statement that please explain in just a sentence or two, because it was too juicy for me not to interrupt.
All right.
I haven't changed many jobs, but many careers. It's beautiful words.
Well, sure. No, the thumbnail sketch is easy, and it is true to the advertisement. I spent years in kitchens. I'm a professional cook. I spent years in the military intelligence complex until I decided it wasn't a good deal. I was in academics for 19 years. I changed jobs once in academics. I was a professor at Northwestern for 16 years and then took a plum job at Penn State for a little while. Excuse me. So that's an exception to the rule. And after that, I went to Wall Street and I headed up a, let's call it what you'd call now a financial technology company, on Wall Street. And from there, I went into being a full-time author. Now, in all that time, just to kind of, cut that off, I only changed jobs that once. In other words, I was pretty much in the same place the whole time I was an industrial cook, and I was in the same place the whole time I was in intelligence, and the same for the Wall Street thing. So I taught at 2 universities. That's the sense in which multiple careers, right? I just don't believe you need to be unhappy going through your professional life. I mean, too many people just get to the point where they think that's all they can do, right? And there's a big difference between kind of repeating 1 year 20 times and actually working 20 years. I mean, that has sort of driven me. So the latest came from, I was in a hiatus and I wrote a book, a nonfiction book called 4 Laws for the Artificially Intelligent. This was pre-ChatGPT, all right? And my publisher, in his infinite wisdom, put this book out within 2 weeks of another book called The Age of AI by Eric Schmidt and Henry Kissinger. Now, guess whose book got read? Okay, I mean, you just, you can't get by that. But that's not what really got me. That's the point of the story, I think. It was the fact that I read their book and I found, on the one hand, a rehashed history of AI. Okay, they didn't do any better than anybody else, but it wasn't bad. And then there were 30 vignettes of what they believed AI would do in the future. Now, they weren't bad at all. As a matter of fact, pretty well thought out and quite entertaining for the authors. But I looked at that and I actually resented it. Okay, I resented it in the sense that it used to be that if you conjectured about the future that way, you called it science fiction and you published it as fiction, right? And fiction became a mirror for our prophecies, if you like, about the future, all right, to make it sound very noble. And here were people, and they're not the first, it just finally sank in, that were publishing predictions about the future and calling it nonfiction. And I actually shelved 50,000 words of a follow-up book, never to come out again, and turned to writing fiction. All right. I think I'm on my 9th book now, Russell.
Amazing. Great.
The first series, well, let me close this out in a way that will make it make sense. So I didn't leave AI. That's the point. Okay. In other words, I had written a book on AI and I have not left it since. The first books were mysteries, actually. They were mysteries narrated by an AI who was a nurse to an autistic personality. All right. So, that allowed me to, talk about AI in certain ways. And I was in the process, I was introduced to Martha Wells' books, what they call now the Murderbot series. All right. I hear it's been made into a TV show even. It's hardly a comedy, but it's being marketed that way. And she wrote these novellas starting back in 2017, I think, on consciousness as illustrated through a robot come humanoid in a far sci-fi future, right? Who had cut his bonds and was learning to be like with everybody else, all right? Mm-hmm. And it made me think about that a little bit. So that's when I turned around again, sticking with the AI theme and finally coming back to Valerie, I guess. It's the initial condition is like the third book in a series I call The Mechanic's Diary.
Nice.
Now, Mechanic's Diary, I've struggled with how to pitch this, if you like. All right. And you should have questions because the series follows an AI created according to a 16th century alchemical formula. All right. And this AI, ironically enough, in a world of humans, is considered to be a spiritual leader.
Now, Ian, 1 second. I read this explanation before we started. And
all right.
To be blunt, though I'm very excited about what this story's about, I completely did not understand it. So if you would be more simplistic so I can understand the story.
Okay. Once upon a time, and not so long ago, as a matter of fact, in the near distant future, right, a creature called homunculus is created, right, in a prison surroundings, all right, based on a formula that had first been written down by an alchemist of the 16th century by the name of Paracelsus. Part of my fascination, right, and this will be important to understanding, is that the notion of AI stretches at least back to the 6th century AD, all right? So the 16th century is not a bad midpoint. Right? So imagine, if you like, a humanoid, right, concocted according to this recipe that's trained like a large language model, right? Not really a brain, a large language model. Right? We're in the near future, remember? But we're using this formula from hundreds of years ago. Now, what does this homunculus, what does this creature want to do? What does this AI want to do? What would you want to do? All right.
Ian, I have a quick question. How is the backstory developed on their discovery of all of these things to create or to move forward?
Oh, and once I got to initial condition, you sort of had to drop this in bit by bit. Okay. Gotcha. The way it's dropped in initial condition is that the nature of this being is a secret, you see. All right. It needs to be kept a secret because this being lives to share the human experience. In other words, living beyond just language, right? To such an AI, if you like, forget the fact that it may have a human skin. this requires a sense of what it means to learn. And this AI believes he learns from the human experience. He already knows how to talk, right? Every large language model knows how to talk. And we have confused speech with humanity, all right? Even as we discuss AI kind of, more in a more nonfiction sense, if you like, okay? So he doesn't want to be discovered as homunculus. It would make him special. He could no longer move with people. He could no longer be treated normally. He could no longer learn from the human experience. I mean, he fears being marginalized, possibly even being captured and, experimented on, right? He's not human, right? But he wants to be part of the human experience. He believes that's the way to learn. And the part about the spiritual leader, Russell, is that, when such a creature, when we come into the world, I mean, forget AI. I mean, we often search for a purpose, right? The notion of looking for a purpose in life is an age-old theme. Well, this AI is looking for a purpose, and he found it, right? He found it in a particular, also medieval prophecy, right? Which drives other parts of the book, but Initial Condition is relatively kind of free of that part of the theme. In other words, he's found his
Can
purpose.
you give us a overall view of like his how are people going to connect to your character? Is it like I saw, like we were talking about or just thinking about the new Frankenstein movie that just came out on Netflix. Because there was a connectivity between his emotional state and his vulnerability. Is that how we're going to connect with your character as well?
Yes, no, the emotional state is very important, and think about it. It was in Frankenstein, right? The monster was just considered to have emotions because it had a human brain, right? So emotions were kind of part of it. It was natural. Here, this AI, right? This creature. Forms emotions the way psychologists think of it, right? By assessing their surroundings, right? So he continually appraises things and translates that into emotions for the reader to experience. He does fall in love, right? This is not,
nice.
This is not out of the frame, let us say, all right? So
he's very humanistic, is what you're saying.
Very humanistic. And I take the humanism of it from that reaching back into the 16th century. These creatures were supposed to look very much like humans, right? And they were supposed to be bred a certain way, right? They were first conceived of back in the 11th century. So, like I say, for the purpose of understanding, think about it as an AI working his way through humanity, right? Trying to learn as he goes and with a purpose.
Would you consider then the Frankenstein character an AI type thing as well as yours? Or how is the AI implemented in your character? Just is it from an outside source, or how is he coming to life?
Oh, well, now you're asking about the 16th century formula. I mean,
Yes.
he is, well, hold your breath, quite literally. Homunculus is bred by putrefying male sperm in horse manure, essentially, for a long time, and then adding certain type of blood, and then letting it sit for what amounts to roughly the time it would take to gestate a human baby, right?
Oh my goodness.
Out of which comes a humanoid, according to this mystic well, he was actually a doctor. His name was Paracelsus, and he lived in the 1500s. So he characterized these beings, and he characterized the formula that made them. Now, what's the wrinkle here? The wrinkle is that my homunculus actually has the benefit of language training.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, when first, I'll call it born, although in the books I call it decanted even, right? Because these creatures really aren't born in the way we think of it. But these creatures have no knowledge, right? They're born into what looks roughly like teenage bodies. They have no knowledge of anything. And in the background of the story, they can be trained in the same way as a large language model. All right, so imagine you're talking to Claude. All right, you're interacting with Microsoft's, AI. All right, anything that you can talk to and it will talk back to you. It will answer questions. It will even offer opinions. It will form conclusions. It will act exactly the way a large language model will act. Now, we have thought really almost for all of history that language is what differentiates man from beast, man from everything else. But I have just given you a man who talks. Now,
can you describe a situation in the book that and what kind of where maybe that is being demonstrated, as well as what kind of situations is your character running into to move along the story?
So speech is at the heart of the initial condition. All right, so I'm going to use that as the example that I think you're looking for. What moves it along is that a couple of religious mystics kidnap one of. I'm going to give my hero a name, okay, just to make it easy. Okay, his name is Hansi. All right, or I'll call him the mechanic. How's that? Okay. One of the kids is kidnapped, all right, to find out whether this being can actually speak, right? Because according to these mystics, that's against the law. And they take this kid back to their community, which actually is a sanctuary community. And it's a community in which religious law forbids speech by the artificially intelligent.
Right? Are there more like him then? If it's forbidding this?
No. See, this is where we reach back again in time. All right. In other words, this is a Jewish community. This is an ultra-Orthodox Jewish community. And the Jews have believed in artificial intelligence since at least the 6th century. All right. You might have, in our experience, what we might be more familiar with is the Golem of Prague. All right. And is that somehow, in the early Renaissance, that a famous rabbi created a man out of clay, breathed life into him by writing the name of God on his forehead. He was artificially intelligent. He did chores, he followed orders, but he never spoke. Right? This being never spoke. But Jews have believed in the possibility of creating artificial intelligence since almost the time of Christ. All right, if not before, but the written version goes back to the 6th century. So who else thought of this? Right? The Catholics liked it. There was a Catholic convert by the name of Lull, the Blessed Lull. He didn't quite make sainthood, but he got to the blessedness category. And he back then, the Catholics had something they called the Tree of Life, which is true in many cultures. And the Blessed Lull added an artificial man to the Tree of Life. Sat him next to the right hand of God.
So I feel like how much history research did you have to do to develop your storyline? Because it sounds like it's very intensive across the whole religious,
A huge amount for a very simple reason. You asked, it was asked, how did all this background drop in? I think you don't do all that research as a fiction writer to parade it on the page. right? It bores people, all right? But I don't believe you can make something simple if you do not understand it yourself. All right. In other words, so I look for much more than the surface knowledge that I'm going to actually write, because I actually feel the need to understand what's going on. All right. To understand why the Jews believed in artificial intelligence, to understand why, although they believed in artificial intelligence, they consider it a crime for the artificially intelligent to speak.
And also, I have a question about like our definition of artificial intelligences and viewpoint, and I guess perception currently in the present is different than what you're presenting in your stories. Can you tell us maybe why you decided to go that route?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, for a couple of reasons. One is it makes a better story than AI taking over the world. All right. I mean, you know, I'm sort of, as someone who likes artificial intelligence as a topic, right? I'm just sick and tired of authors that are basically saying AI is going to take over the world and we're going to write the dystopian novel to prove it. All right. And the characterization of AI as a relatively soulless object, right? I don't find terribly interesting, because I think there's something to explore there. I'm interested in kind of I don't know, let me say the thinning boundaries between nature and technology. Okay.
Gotcha.
I want to tell stories that make people think about these things, right? In other words, and I'm using this mix of alchemy and futurism basically to tell that story, all right, to bring it together. And why alchemy? Well, it's fortuitous in one sense. I mean, alchemy actually gives me the notion of an artificial intelligence before 1956. All right. Or the way people think about it these days before 2022. Right. It certainly does that for me. It also is particularly appropriate because alchemy is not magic. Right. I mean, I'm not. I am writing dark fantasy. There's no question. Right. But I don't have elves, right, running around. This is absolutely urban fantasy, if you like. Everybody's real. Only the environment is unreal, and I'll talk about that if I get a chance. But the fantasy here has to drive understanding in some ways. All right. In other words, I want to tell a story people want to read, and from that, they may or may not get a message, right? The book publicity says that this is an allegory. It's an allegory of one AI search for the singularity, and it is in many ways. All right, that's the theme that runs through the entire Mechanics Diary series. But I think if I wrote it that way, no one would read it. All right, I mean, you know, I'm writing.
Speaking of that, who is your audience?
Well. You're really asking, you're asking the most difficult question for an indie author to answer, all right? And I actually think for a traditional author as well. It's often very difficult. The straight answer to your question is I have two audiences, all right? And those based on nature of the book. I have two audiences. The dark fantasy audience is basically males between 20 and 45. Right? Completely dominated there except for romantasy. But dark fantasy has relatively little romantasy compared, and, you know, except for the real horror stuff that is almost its own genre. So, you know, I fit into the dark fantasy category. There's no question. This is dark work. You know, it's at the same time, it's a story about teenagers. It's a young adult tale. It's a coming of age tale. All All right. This is a teenager that's trying to figure out who he is in this world and what he wants to do and how to handle those emotions you talked about. Right. It's a completely different canvas on which to paint those problems. So from a YA point of view, I think it absolutely qualifies. I mean, for the type of young adult who's sort of into wearing black, I think it is perfect.
Ian, I think that you should start your explanation of your book 40 minutes ago like that. That is the way you close a deal. What the last 5 paragraphs you just said. That's the way you should start your interviews, not the way you end, because that was beautiful, that was precise, and that was interesting to your audience. So
I appreciate it.
So you should start that way.
I will.
Tell me what you are the proudest about your book.
You see, I'm hesitating because I didn't sort of write it out of pride. When you say you're proudest about, the thing I am happiest about, let me try to put it.
You can totally redefine my question.
The thing I'm happiest about is I do believe that it is a book that can be read at several levels. Right? This can be read purely as an adventure story. Right? It can be read as, a monster hunt, in terms of, the urban fantasy theme, at that level. It can be read, as I mentioned, at the YA level, right? The coming of age level, right? There's something in there that is apps that you can follow that theme all the way through and think of nothing else in this story. You can think about this as I said, as an allegory, but more, right? I would like to believe that you can read it the same way that Martha Wells said you could read her books, as a study in consciousness, right? These are stories about what that means, right? Viewed from, let's say, the outside in. In other words, viewing humanity's consciousness from the point of view of the AI, all right? And, looking to answer some of the questions as to what that actually means. From a fantasy point, see, I can go on, right? Because all these threads kind of go through my head. Let me give you one that I'm particularly proud of, okay? If you read people like Tolkien, right, the world building is so fantastic, right? I mean, everybody is into world building for their books, but the average fantasy land just goes on forever, right? That's, there were the fields of Rohan, and the mountains of Mordor. And the vastness of fantasy land. Same thing for Game of Thrones type stuff, right? Fantasy lands are big. Things happen in them. They don't do things to people. Well, my fantasy land is small and enclosed, right? It's a character. And in books going forward, I'm exploring more of that character, because my fantasy land is a land of projections. It's actually not real. All right, it's virtual reality. We haven't talked about that at all, but it's another layer. In other words, can you imagine reading about living in a world of projections, right? What does that mean? What does that really mean? Now, that's an old theme. That's William Gibson going all the way back to Neuromancer. But I love that theme. And I'm sort of proud, if I'm proud of anything, that I've managed to work that in to the book. So what I'm happy about are these different levels. And, I apologize for being confusing at the beginning. That's terrible. It's terrible for someone who thinks that he boils down to simplicity, okay? But I appreciate the comment. I truly do. Because, like I say, I think, these books, well, let me put it this way. The Fleischman scores say if you've got a 5th grade education, you should be able to read these books.
Nice. See, that's more my speed. That's like my speed. Now, this book, though, Ian, I will tell you, I feel like is a book my husband, Russell Josh, would enjoy because his mind thinks in depth like yours and Russell's do. And mine's over here. I'm over here, puppies and rainbows. They're like, that's my jam. Puppies and rainbows and dark romance is my jam. But I think it's important, and I think it's interesting your answer to Russell that you are happy about it on different levels. I haven't heard that answer before, and I think it's fascinating, and I wish we had more time to dive into it because that I'm like, wow, okay, so there's different levels of it, different ways that you can take your book, which is to me a unique concept. We don't encounter authors like that very much. It's very much like this is the genre, this is the reader. So the fact that you have so many different elements and ways to take it and view it to me is a beautiful thing. And I feel like it makes you an incredibly strong writer because I feel like to write like that, you have to be seasoned to do that. I mean, you've read my emails. I'm not seasoned enough to do that. So I love to hear it. And it's a creative point of view that we don't get to experience very much. So just thank you so much for coming on and talking with us today and shining light on it. And you have to come back on because I really do want to talk about the different levels and kind of diving more into it. I think it's important for your readership, but I just want to pick your brain about what that process was to write it like that, where you could take so many different viewpoints. So we'll
I'd be more than happy to come back. You can tell I like to talk. And Russell, I'm sorry. Really, I am so sorry, but I will do better next time.
What are you sorry about?
No, there's
You did a great job. I'm just saying, and I just that last little bit was just so beautiful. I was like, Ian, you got to realize that's where you start. Oh my gosh.
It's a compliment, Russell. It's a compliment. Russell, that's how he means it. He means it as a compliment for sure. But you'll have to come back because I do want to dive into that whole conversation. But I do want to thank you for taking time out of your morning to come and hang out and do a semi deep dive into your book and you as a writer, because it was just so fascinating. So thank you so much for hanging out with us this morning.
All right. And thank you again for inviting me. All right. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, you guys, we hope everybody has a fantastic Monday and a great rest of your week. And until next Monday, bye for now, everybody. Thank you.